Perfect. So does.
All right, we are about to go live.
All right, everybody be quiet.
Recording live from the E. Haley Memorial Studios, straight out of Almont, Ontario, it's time for This Death Clock Has 60 Minutes, your one and only weekly Warmahordes news broadcast. It's 8 p.m. Wednesday night, the beers are cold, the news is fresh, and the death clock starts now.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Death Clock. It is Wednesday night.
It is.
We're back, and Trollblood Scrum is back tonight. From what I
Holy
hear
crap.
as well.
They
It's
are,
like,
yeah.
It's like everybody's coming off of summer vacation all of a sudden.
Thank God.
There is not a versus this evening. We are actually going to do one of these podcasty thingies.
Podcast?
Yes, that's what. Or,
I've heard those.
and we also do a video version that you can watch live on Twitch every Wednesday night at 8.
And YouTube.
And YouTube. Actually, yeah, we should probably go to the YouTube channel. We're trying to move everybody over to the YouTube channel, just so you all know.
So
but it's a
that's
slow
really weird
migration.
because all YouTubers right now are moving to Twitch.
Really?
Seriously?
What?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, YouTube no longer provides ad money. And since most of YouTubers actually get
Make
their money from
money?
see, this is what we do with money, not
Right.
not actually making any money.
Right. No, we don't make. We lose money.
It's funny.
I've literally like you've spent more money than any of us, but we've literally just we are getting poor.
Oh,
being
yeah,
podcasters.
doing
We
podcasts.
send Jason out to the corner for money.
yeah,
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
exactly right. So yeah,
Usually
last
I
week
just come back with cheeseburgers.
last week Jason made $100.50.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We won't say what the 50
question-
cents was for.
Well, no. The question is supposed to be who was the asshole that only paid you 50 cents, and you're supposed to say all of them.
All of them.
Yeah.
So, anyways, ladies and gentlemen,
Alternate
It was
punchline
really
is
late.
the rest of them aren't as cheap as you.
right. So we got a lot to talk about tonight, and I want to introduce everybody who's on the cast tonight because we have the whole band together. Whenever we do a hobby cast, we always call the one and only James Craig, who is he's like the Paul to my George.
Ha ha!
And over on the other side of the table here is the one and only Maelstrom, who's the Ringo to my George.
Hello.
And then finally, there's George, who's the George to my George.
Wait, what?
I don't know what to say to that.
So how does that? Wait, who are you then? So, anyways, what we're gonna go around the table. Let's talk about our week in War Machine. We've all got a story to tell, except for me, because I just got back from sunny British Columbia. Actually, it wasn't sunny at all because the smoke from the wildfires had completely moved in.
I was going to say, who else really appreciates living on a big chunk of Canadian Shield
Yeah.
where it's not burning, falling apart, or really windy?
And
Yep.
right now, I'm kind of happy about having 6 months of rain solid. It's
Yeah.
like, super saturated soil doesn't bother me anymore.
Nope.
The $70,000 fix to my basement when it flooded kind of sucked. But anyway, so let's go over to TK Cultist, the one and only James Craig. How was your week in War Machine?
It was pretty darn good, I guess. The painting competition, Sword and Brush, was last weekend. My son entered a War Machine model, so that's that.
Ooh.
And aside from that, I played Guild Ball, which is not War Machine, but still.
No, I'm just kidding.
No,
But you're actually starting
we were
a.
told not to do that again.
Sorry.
You're starting a Guild Ball club at your school. You have a club already, a miniatures club at your school, and they this year have opted to play Guild Ball. And I'm guessing that you have your first meeting this week to talk about that.
We did, and we got 7 brand new grade 9s out for our first meeting, plus our returning players and vets who are eager to join. This league's going to be huge.
Wow. Nice, dude.
That's awesome.
Yeah. We'll have more next week. We had another showing at lunch hour in the cafeteria today where all kinds of kids got to come by. I say we've got 4 or 5 more kids coming yet.
So this being said, John from Use on Minis is supposed to send a big box of
Oh, and he hasn't
of
done it yet?
stuff. But I think he's been so busy that he's forgotten about it. So I need all the
Okay.
Moosies to band together and remind John one way or another.
We'll yell at John again.
John, remember that whole thing. So I'm going to go over to Maelstrom. Maelstrom, you got a few games in this week, I'm guessing, or did you just
No,
get
just
the
the one.
Just the one.
Yeah.
But you're back to Crix.
Yeah, back on Crix. I
That
just
was-
feel Legion's, I don't know. I can't get behind the 19-point beasts that die to a stiff breeze.
Dude, you got used to the 300 dudes that
You
just
should come
keep
play
coming
Trolls
back.
where they're 21 points.
Yeah.
Or 11 for a light. It's great.
Yeah, so I played Chris Aubin. and I played Scavarus into Menoth, which is just a terrible idea. So he was playing Fiora 3, and he basically he has Banishing Ward plus the Choir, so I couldn't cast any spells on anything, and Scavarus is kind of all about the spells, so that was really rough for me. I also failed 12 tough rolls in a row.
Oh, that hurts, Mom.
That was really bad. So at the end of like turn 3, he had pretty much wiped out everything on my side of the table. Mistakenly left Fiora 3 a little too close. And I got an Arc Node in position, and I had gathered quite a few souls from the previous turn. So I managed to TK Fiora 3 a couple times within range of Erebus, who basically, if he hits you once, you're stationary.
Yep.
And managed to assassinate him down to the 1 box.
Oh, no.
Yeah, just down to the 1. If I had rolled 1 less, it wouldn't have worked.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. So, I mean, I won, but I did not feel like a victory by any state of the imagination.
But I hate to say, I hate to interject here, but that is the best part about War Machine.
Yeah.
Is that all of your great plans can go to hell.
Yeah.
Anybody who watched last week's cast knows all about that.
Yeah. Were those great plans, though? Were they?
They were barely good plans.
So, Jason, tell us a bit. George,
I just did.
Tell us a bit about your week in War Machine.
Well, I got a game in at Tuesday night at Out of the Box. It's the start of our Rotten Bounty League, which was a lot of fun. Rotten Bounty has these really interesting scenarios. The one I played has a 12-inch circle zone in the middle that is both impassable terrain and you can't see through it. And it gains tokens every turn, and every turn you get a sort of pulse out of it that does 1 damage, and the distance from the 12-inch circle is by however many tokens there are.
Ooh.
So on his first turn, it's 1. On his second turn, it's 3. On his third turn, it's 5. Because
just
you
kills
get a
1
turn on
point
mine, on one on his.
Which just kills 1 point infantry. So
Yep, they evaporate.
Ah.
Now, I was playing into Sudabite in the chat, into Connor, and he was playing Scavarus, I think it is, with the guy with Erebus. Crick's man, right next
What
to
is
me.
it? He was playing Scavarus?
Yeah.
Erebus, yeah.
Yeah, so
Same
he
thing
was
I was
playing
just talking
Scavarus with Erebus, yeah. And he had some Banes and Satixis and Deathjack, and they split up to go around, and unfortunately, him staying away from the zone and splitting his forces meant that the TPs I had on either side got to just live the dream and spray down, like 10
Did
guys.
TEPs really dream, though? I think they just live the dream all day. I think
TPs dream of electric sheep.
aren't TEPs just the wet dream of every COC player? So
Yeah.
aren't they the dream? Like,
They did their job, and one of the things about Rotten Bounty is that you actually have trap cards. Unlike the Arcana, you don't display them at the beginning of the game, and so I was able to use one of my trap cards that when I killed more than 6 guys in one activation, that model got to activate again. So the TEP configured to kill Satixis by rolling 5 dice to hit, killed a whole bunch of Satixis, moved over and lined up on Deathjack, reconfigured for armor cracking, and blew a couple holes in Deathjack's armor before Deathjack took it out.
sounds completely broken.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It did end with Scavarus going in on a TEP, not managing the crack armor, and then the TEP configuring for kill caster and doing it.
Cool. I unfortunately have no story to tell, but I already stated that. So things are
Get better, Scrub?
But yeah, so I'm gonna go. So I'm gonna be doing a ton of painting this week. Or actually next week, because this week is almost over for me. Because I'm leaving tomorrow. I have a contract to do tomorrow. So so my goal is I have the new bust from Privateer Press, the Borka
the
bust.
new Borka bust, yeah.
I have that, and I have 3 models, Privateer Press exclusive models that you gave me to paint. And the goal is to have those 3 done for the painting competition in October.
Ooh,
in
that'll be
Gatineau.
nice.
So I'm going to. So I've been trying to close my painting down to 3 hours for regular models, or per project basically. Because I was finding that I was spending like 2 days on just
a grunt.
on a grunt. which worked really great when it
the
comes
grunt
to-
looked beautiful.
The grunt is beautiful. Like, it was great for that Blood Bowl team that I was working on. But by the same token, I need to cut that down. So the goal is actually this week to break that barrier again and open back up and actually spend 2 or 3 days per project, and we'll see where they end up, because I need some new. I've actually burned out every single competition level model I've worked on at this point, so it's time to refresh the stock, so to speak. That leads.
Soon Mini Crate will be out, and I caved.
You're just going to be dropping models on
And
me
I can drop all kinds of pretty models on you.
I got to actually finish my own crap eventually.
Well, like, I mean, if you
good
want
luck with
competition models, I'm playing Convergence, so I don't get to use any of
That's
these
true.
models.
That's true. So they stay pretty.
They literally can sit on a shelf and look really gorgeous until you need to take them somewhere.
All right. Well, that's going to lead us into this week's news. There isn't a ton of news items. I unfortunately have been away, so I didn't actually see any news. We do have a secret theme that was divulged to you by Hungerford
Yes, I was lucky enough to catch Hungerford on
on a good day.
On Discord, and he was able to divulge a new theme for us, and it works for everybody. It's great.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
everybody.
It's called DTA.
Okay.
So the army composition, you take bees.
Okay. Bees.
So the first benefit is I don't know,
But like
free-
actual live bees.
bees.
Right. Okay.
Benefit one was I don't know, free models probably.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. So probably some more bees.
Yeah, so more bees. Benefit two is probably honey. That's
Well,
what
that
they
makes
do.
sense.
Yeah.
This is really great for players that like tea while they're yeah.
And benefit three is hornets are assholes.
Right. Well, that's true. Yeah. So Jason, you got mad because you just looked at this theme and
I just bought a unit of fucking wasps and they're
so
useless.
fucking unplayable trash. So I think it's overpowered, but you know,
Well, I like that we're finally seeing themes that everybody can take.
Right.
It's really going to open up some of the factions because a lot of the really limited factions have been stuck with only the models in War Machine. And it's nice to see some inanimate objects or animate objects from just the world in
from the
general.
world and like anything you can go out into the wilds.
Yeah.
Get stung by some bees.
For people who are looking for bees, watch out for your local hive. They tend to have bees. They can get a little stingy, but
the only problem
it's no worse than trying to put together Death Jack.
Here's the problem. Monsanto. That's all I got to say.
Yeah.
So moving on from this topic into Sorry, what were you going to say, James?
It's okay. I just think that Privateer Press really needs to start upping its sensitivity levels a little bit there. That level 2 tier just really doesn't work for diabetics. And I think that the idea that it's for everyone is a little bit misleading.
That's
well,
true.
Now, counter to that, would it help if they included maple syrup along with the honey? Because that is fructose and not sucrose, right? Because it comes from plants, and that would be better for diabetics, wouldn't it?
So then you would take moose, get maple syrup, and profit.
Exactly.
I like it.
Sweet. Okay, so we've solved all the problems. We'll put that in the CID when it comes up.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Was there any other news?
There's been various stuff. They've pimped out new models for Loot Crate. We have the Ghost of Christmas Past, or the Geist, Feral Geist of Christmas Past, or Christmas Future. I can't remember which one it was. We have CID closed. So we saw the final. Orion didn't change for 2 weeks, so we're pretty sure how Orion's going to come out, or at least they've got a good idea in their head. So I'm kind of excited about him. That configuration, just as a Convergence player, makes me so happy. What else did we get?
Did they manage to fix Gaston, or is he still just kind of like?
I don't think anything's changed since the last time you looked at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no. The answer
The
is
last thing I heard that I paid any attention to whatsoever, ambushing polar bears.
Yeah.
I didn't need any news
yeah,
after
yeah,
that.
You're good. You're solid.
Frightmares, a lot of the new Grimkin units,
Right,
including the Murder Crows,
the Murder
which
Crows
look
and the
so
Frightmares,
good, are coming in. The Scorn book is finally coming out,
Oh wow.
which is awesome. And we did get, the Insider today wasn't even a new theme. It was basically just taunting us with new artwork.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go.
Okay. Grimkin, I just want to throw this one out there, and somebody else I'm sure will steal this idea and run with it, but ever since I've seen the Grimkin, all I can think about doing is painting them up as a labyrinth theme army and making like a Jared model as one of the generals. I just
You could do
Yeah.
you could do the child as an Elwyn with the big ears.
Oh yeah.
And that would be cool. I like it. Ooh. And of course the Murder Crows just look like Skeksis, so you can pull that off. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on from the news to tonight's roundtable. We're going to get the 411. The 411 is the right word.
Don't do 911.
We're gonna get the 911. We're gonna get the 411 on Sword and Brush from James. James, you just came back from Sword and Brush. We touched base with you last year at exactly this time when you had come from the last Crystal Brush. So this is kind of like the continuing update.
Crystal Brush or Sword and Brush?
No, Sword and Brush.
You just said Crystal Brush.
Did I say Crystal Brush? I meant Sword and Brush. It's because I haven't written. I haven't
this
written
year,
wrong.
the Sword and Brush is a qualifier for the Crystal Brush.
Oh, so you were almost
you got
right.
both right.
There you go. So James, how was it this year? Highlights, lowlights. What's the hotness coming from the Canadian painting world?
So I know you'll be shocked to hear, but David Faust and Mathieu Fontaine, two of the finest painters in Canada, showed up and made it a battle between them, which was not at all unexpected once we see them walk in the door. Fantastic entries. The quality level at Sword and Brush is enormous. There is so much good work there every year. I don't think the numbers were wildly up from last year, but the whole show is just amazing. David Faust won the Judges Best in Show Award, which means he's the one that wins the Crystal Brush qualifier and will be flown to Chicago next spring. And Mathieu Fontaine won the People's Choice Award with his Three Witches, which were just fantastic. So good.
He gets flown to Detroit and dropped off in the inner city.
Yeah.
He's not actually allowed into the States anymore.
Oh, there we go.
So,
Complicated.
Yeah.
So we ask you this when you come back from any of these shows. Was there any sort of new technique or new thing that you saw prevalent in what's going on right now with the top level painters?
I didn't see anything outrageously different this time around. But I've been to more shows this year than I have in a while, because I was at the Crystal Brush and then I was at the World Expo and now I was at this. So I think that a lot of the artists are hitting more of the checklist, if you will, for high level work. There's very little that's getting missed by people who really want to compete. It's just comes down to execution more than anything else, and composition. But I think that a lot of the things like differentiating material textures is happening all over the place, and a lot of interesting dynamic color schemes are happening. One of my favorite pieces at the show is by a Toronto artist named Zeno Mladen, and he is a fantastic historical painter. And he did a little diorama scene, Civil War era, all done in like grayscale black and white. But then a few of the characters' clothes were in like a desaturated color. It was so good. Like that one a lot. And Dragomir, who was the first Canadian Slayer Sword winner in Golden Demons, and has been my friend for many, many years. He managed to come out this year, and he had a very successful day as well, getting a gold in Ordnance and gold and best in show diorama. So it was really nice to see him back out and in the mix again.
Are we seeing a continuation of the fads like the painted backdrop and stuff like that we've seen in other shows?
I didn't see any painted backdrops at this show at all, actually. Which
Interesting.
Was nice, in my opinion, because I don't like those. But no, I didn't see any of those there this weekend. But there was a really interesting mix of models. The Sword and Brush has such a diverse attendance that you really see a little bit of everything there, and it was really, really cool.
Jason, what's something hilarious is going on in the chat? You got to
talking to Bubba. Bubba's giving me terrible ideas.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. That's what Bubba
Shocking.
does. I guess I want to, since you brought this up, let's talk a bit about textures, and because I think that's something that sort of the mid-level painters like myself, I'm not a master of textures. I can do metals really well. I can do faces pretty good, but differentiating textures in, say, leather versus cloth. Do you have any sort of tips or tricks that you picked up from some of the masters on that, or yourself?
So it's something that's been really important to me for a few years now that I've really tried to focus on, and the entry level version, if you will. Things like that are leather that sit next to things that are cloth. Make one of them, probably the cloth, very matte, and make the leather slightly satin. Use that satin coat that you have from whichever paint company you enjoy, and use that even as just a start to say this part is different than this part, that the straps are different than the cloth. And if you can separate those things, it gives more information for the viewer's brain to pick up on, and it just creates a more interesting finish because it's all covered in paint. And chances are, as most painters do, they have a preference to one or two brands of paint, which means that most of the paint that they are using has the same surface quality as the paint that they're using on the skin, the cloth, the leather, the whole thing. It's all got the same kind of surface finish, except for the actual metallics. So if you can add some variation in there, you can add a lot of interest to your model for very little extra work.
I guess that goes down to highlights and stuff too. If you're trying to create something that has a glossier finish, work your highlights up sooner and a little bit higher. And if you're looking for something that has a dull finish, work your shadows a bit deeper and the saturation a bit lower, and that helps that too. But I never thought of just using the simplicity of just using your final candy coat or whatever to get it to make those.
Years ago, I did a Throne of Everblight, and Jason's seen this, where it was a very simple technique, and I sprayed the whole thing in matte, and then I painted the tongue in the gloss coat, and that gives it that icky look, but it really differentiates it from the rest of the model.
And I love using a candy coat on gems, and even though I can do the highlight myself, I still put the candy coat on in the end, just because it totally separates it from them, which is I just hadn't thought about that. That's great.
So James, in the 1/6 scale model size, one of the big things that's happening currently is with the micro texture fabrics and stuff, they're starting to add actual fabric to models. Are we seeing anything like that at the miniature level scale?
Yes and no. Not so much actual like swatches of fabric, but more adding other materials to create complex surfaces. People are using more and more natural basing materials, and sometimes those materials find their place into things like fur or small details, and can really add to the qualities of a model. I'm not quite sure that we'll ever really see a lot of the inclusion of actual fabrics in the scale that we're working in, because the fabric itself, it's hard to get something whose weave is small enough and whose texture looks correct in scale with what we do, because it's so small.
Just want to remind anybody that's in the chat, Jason is on the chat.
We do have a question.
Perfect. That was timely.
Why haven't you taken off your pants? And oh wait, no, a different
That's
one.
a different question. TMM, which I'm saying is true
metallic metals.
Yep. Yeah. Versus non-metallic metals. When should you use each, or is it sort of a real painters use non-metallic metals and only scrubs do true metallic metals?
Then I guess I'm a scrub. That question comes straight out of 2002.
2002 called. They want their question back.
There you go. 2001, when I competed in my first Golden Demons, was when the whole non-metallic metal French painter fad really hit the world. And that year, they were like, somebody said to me, "Yeah, your piece was really cool, but it's not like you can paint non-metallic metal or something." I'm like, "Challenge accepted, jackass!" And I did it the next year. So, as to who paints with metallic metals, who paints with non-metallic, you just pick. Do what feels right for the atmosphere of your piece. Do what feels right for the contrast you're trying to create. There are beautiful examples of both out there, and there are some that are mind-bendingly good that it's hard to tell which it is. That's what I find really interesting. But the truth is, it's not a yes no, and it's not a real painters do this, and it's none of that. It really is just a choice. Most of my Golden Demon pieces that I won with were parts of a Beastman army that I was building back then. I did that whole army with non-metallic metals. My War Machine army is going to be all metallic metals, not because I can't do non-metallic metals and not because I don't want to do non-metallic metals. It's just because I want to do the metallic metals in this particular case. I want that extra contrast, and there's some big honking scary looking weapons, and I want them to be shiny and different, and I want to add rust. So that's what I'm going to do. It's entirely about the feel of the piece and the goal of the painter, not a right wrong. One's not better for competition than the other. And you'll find that a lot of competition painters, guys like David Faust, they'll just choose based on the piece that they're doing.
Something I'll also interject with, something that worked really well for me and might be a great advice for somebody who's trying to figure out how to do non-metallic metals. It doesn't hurt to learn how to do it, because one of the cool things is you can take that and apply it to your true metallic metals as well. Because if you take what you've learned doing, Jason's just going to get hammered. That's his plan this evening. He's like, I'm out.
He's out. You'll eventually figure it out.
What did
Keep
I
going.
do?
Keep going.
Was it me?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Grab me a glass of water while you're out there.
All right. Something weird just happened, and I'll figure out how eventually.
Someday you'll read the chat.
Oh. What I was going to say is you can combine the two skills together and create better true metallic metals by using the skills you learned doing non-metallic metals, creating the same shading, creating the same highlights, but using your dark tones or your non-metallics. Because when you look at a sword, for example, there are areas that don't reflect. That's where that the non-metallic metal can be used to create those effects. It's a really cool blending of the two skills, and people who have mastered it, they have a whole lot more depth to those weapons.
The thing I always love is when I look at a model and I can't tell. Like, I can't tell whether which one it is, and that's when I'm really impressed.
One thing I think I got to throw in here too is that the metallic paints that are available now are light years away from where they were even just a few years ago. The metallic paints by companies like Scale 75, the new Vallejo metal coats, Dark Star liquid metals, they're so good. The pigment is so much finer. The finish is so much better than the old Bolt Gun Mithril Silver. And you know what? Bolt Gun's still a good paint too.
Do you have any recommendations?
He's back! Yay!
Do you have any recommendations on metallics that you would actually use with an airbrush that's not going to just off your airbrush the second time you use them?
Sure. I really like, again, the new Vallejo liquid metals. They are a very, very fine pigment, very, very smooth formulation. I've had no issues with them yet. And I haven't put too many of them through my airbrush, but I still really like the Dark Star molten metals. They are just gorgeous paints. But with metallics, no matter how good they are, you're still gonna have to clean your airbrush a little more often because of the nature of the flake that's in them. But those new Vallejos, they're a smaller range of colors. They're kind of pricey because you get them in huge bottles, but man, they go a long way, and they are superb.
Next up, you had your son at this competition. Speak to us a little bit about your son's first experience painting, and how he did at the competition. Because I think it was probably the most exciting thing for me, was hearing about a new,
very cool
young painter just kicking some serious ass.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my young lad's 9. I told you guys this on a previous episode that he came to me last spring and said, "Dad, I've been working on my math. I've been working on my reading. Can I start doing War Machine?" And so we picked him out. I gave him all the books. He picked out his army. He went Cricks, hands down. It was not even a debate. Every, was it 5 out of the 6 things that he pointed out of the book were all Cricks things. And so he went with that. And over the summer, he's been picking away. Now, I mean, he is 9, and he's a boy, and he's a little bit attention deficit challenged. So it was small steps, a little at a time. What are we doing today? And we do one thing and then let him go out and play. And but in the end, he created he finished a Warjack that is really, really fantastic. And in the color scheme that he wanted, all the ideas that he wanted, and he won gold on his first time out. So now he is hyped for next time.
That is frigging awesome.
It is.
That's really cool.
We got to see some pictures of it, and
Yeah,
it
I was looking at it. It looks amazing.
It looks amazeballs.
Oh, yep. James got it up on screen there.
I feel like he might have had some good quality
Direction.
tutelage
Yeah.
on the damage, and maybe some of that. I mean, that goes to the credit of having a great teacher as well. But that is
James, will you be my dad?
Yeah, we're all moving
Who's
in.
your daddy?
We're all moving into James's house. Sorry, sorry, Mrs. Craig. We're moving in.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, it went dark. So let's talk a bit about how to get. You sort of alluded to what your system was. Maybe you could go through that in a little bit more detail, because I think there's a lot of guys out there who are our age who are now having kids that are hardcore gamers, maybe hardcore hobby guys, and they would love to get their kids painting. You had a great technique to do that, so maybe just go through it a second time, a little bit more detail on how you got through the progression.
I'll be perfectly honest with you. I approached it the same way with my son as I do with any person that I'm teaching to paint from the beginning. We started.
He had a lot of practice with you. That's what I'm trying to say. You've taken 2 of his courses now, so
we started with priming, and we primed in black, and then directional white to give it a little more interest, to show where we wanted our colors to go. Plus, he was planning on a color orange that could use a little help popping on top of black. So a little extra white was not a bad thing. But using the black, especially for someone who's doing game level or isn't as likely to get into all the nooks and the crannies and underneath everything, kids in general, using the black allows for a lot of things to just fall into shadow, which is generally a good choice. The nice thing about doing the priming with the airbrush was that it also gave him a little bit of practice with the airbrush, so that when we did go to hit it with the orange coats, he felt like he knew what he was doing. And it became first a general coat, and then just kind of point and spray, quick sprays, just to give a little more orange to the one side and a little more attention to the front of the model to give it its focal areas. And then we let it dry. Once we were done with that, we started base coating all the metal. So we went through with Warp Lock Bronze, which is the new tin bits, or tinny tin if you're using the Vallejo colors. It's a warm brown metal that any other metal you put over it looks better with that underneath it. And the nice thing was, because he was doing cricks and could have some kind of rusty areas and some different types of metals in there, some of the things he just left in tin bits, like the chain underneath the harpoon was, I think, just left in tin bits, and a couple of the areas he just left the tin bits metal showing. Once the tin bits was dry, we started working on layers of dry brushing, pulling silver metallics onto some of the areas. We used a bit of the Vallejo metallic, and we used some, I think I used one of the Privateer press metallics with them to create the silvers. And again, just did all the metal work one stage. So it was all the priming, all the base coat the metal, finish the metal. with the silver or gold in some areas. We used the what's the Crix gold called? The one with the green in it.
Blighted gold or
Blighted gold. That's the one. Yeah. So we used a bit of that. He thought that was a really cool color. Then we got out the sponges, and I showed him how to sponge on a piece of plastic, and then he did it on his model. We then connected a couple of the dots or the bigger areas together so that he could have some bigger chips in there with the same. I use SS Camo Black Brown. There's also a color from MIG called Chipping, which works great, strangely enough, for chipping. But the Camo Black Brown is super dark brown, so it chips well on almost all surfaces. And so he used that, and then he, in a few spots, what he did is he actually mixed a lighter orange first, and then he sponged that on, and then he took his paintbrush and painted inside the light orange spots.
Cool. That's a cool idea.
So that he could have the highlighted edge around the chips. And then a few of the ones that he had sponged on brown initially, he went and did his best to paint the light orange underneath. And then when that was on too thick, he just went back in with the dark brown and thinned out the light orange edge. So that he could get some really great looking chipping all over the model. And that made him really excited. We then set my airbrush on its finest setting and used a lot of... we use the Ammo of MIG masking putty. It's kind of like silly putty, but for painting. And so he masked off the areas around where he wanted glow effects to be, shot them with the White Badger primer, let that dry, then shot them with the Badger purple ghost tint. And so he had glow effects on the eyes, and glow effect on the side, and a glow effect on the side of the harpoon. So it looks pretty badass.
Well, I think we gotta give congratulations to him. That's fantastic.
Super awesome.
We have a question from the audience there.
Well, one from Bubba. I don't know, so much as a question as a demand.
Oh, I see.
Bubba has an event coming up in a couple days and needs a fully painted list. So if you could go ahead and get on that, he says.
Just get on that.
Yeah.
If it's Kador, I could probably do it.
It is Kador. They all look the same anyway.
So yeah, it's spray painted all with a red rattle can.
Yeah.
And
sponge it and call it a day.
Yeah,
I
there
was
you go.
actually just helping.
If he's got it assembled, I'll get it painted.
I was actually.
Tell him to come on by.
Oh, is it off?
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
You're quiet all of a sudden.
I'm super quiet. I was actually just helping somebody at the store last week, or last night. And one of the really neat things that you can do if you have access to Army Painter is they have rattle cans that also have the same coloration as their paint pots.
Right, the Army Painter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Army
So you
Painter
can
series.
actually rattle can after you've done priming. You can rattle can a base coat, and then you have something to fill it in.
Yeah.
When it doesn't work.
The last thing, of course, before we move on to tonight's focus, is how did you do? You been working on some great, and you showed us, tantalized us with your entry for this year. How did it go?
It went well. I got a silver, which is pretty much as expected. You know, you always hope for the gold, but there were several reasons, and the foremost one is something that I've talked about before. A couple of the other judges, they asked me to explain my entry, and they were like, yeah, because when we look at this, we have no idea what it is, what it means, what the background is. You know, it's cool, but you know, you should never leave the judges asking.
Right. It didn't tell
this.
It didn't tell enough of a story. Is that kind of what you're saying?
I guess so. I think part of it is also context of the type of competition and who's judging. You know, I was the kind of, I guess, the gamer judge and, if you will, the most sci-fi fantasy of the judging team. Whereas some of the other guys are like real solid historical. Right. You know, they could tell you the difference between, you know, this gray and this gray in a uniform. And I'm like, hey, it's great. It looks awesome. Should be more green gray. Oh, looks amazing. So my post-apocalyptic Vikings were a bit of an oddball thing. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that. Because for me, this particular scene is almost like my rough sketch for a bigger project.
Oh, that's cool.
The idea that I've settled on is as I began to explore this and create this, there's a few things about it that are really different from anything else I've seen out there. With the exception of Water World, there's not a whole lot of post-apocalyptic water-themed pieces out there, and I really want to do more scenes, more dioramas with the two characters that are in mine, but at different points in their life.
Ooh, cool. So it's like tell a longer term story almost.
Yeah, I'm going to do some mythology building, connecting Norse mythology with post-apocalyptic settings. And I named the two characters in the diorama after the Norse version of more or less Adam and Eve. I haven't done enough research into them yet to determine, but I'm assuming from what I have read that it's a post-Christian contact Norse story, because it sounds an awful lot like Genesis after Ragnarok. So I named the two characters after the male and the female that restart the world after Ragnarok in Norse mythology. Cool. And so I'm dating all the pieces in years AR as an after.
Oh, nice. We have a question for from the audience for you.
Crimson would like to know any tips for going from army painting to tackling your first display piece.
Excellent. So, a couple of things. Give consideration to first model choice. Choose something that's going to have enough interesting surfaces and a strong enough focal point and dynamic enough of a pose to actually hold someone's attention, right? Some people have in the past done like incredibly gorgeous, really boring figures on purpose, choosing the simplest things. I remember Golden Demons in Chicago many years ago. Tim, who's the guy that worked for Games Workshop, painted this like little plastic halfling, and it was just this dumb little model, and he did it so beautifully that he won. But that's not generally the way to push your work forward and get the judge's attention. So choose something dynamic. Give consideration to the overall composition. Does the eye move around every part of the model? Does it have a strong focal point that is the most important part of the model clearly? Usually this is going to be the face, if your model has a face. Think about how the basing supports or relates to the model itself. Trying to create color harmony, trying to create textural separation. These are things that are really, really important for pushing your work up.
Bits of advice that I got in my first competition, which I thought was really valuable for people going from just your normal army painting to composition. Things to consider. Try to not leave any part of your model unpainted. So if there is plastic visible or metal visible on the model, that is something that that just is one of those checked boxes. That is, we as army painters don't even think about it. We're like, when you look at it, it looks great. But a person
don't leave primer showing.
Don't leave primer showing. I mean, you can get away with some black, but it kind of shows if it's, if they turn over. So one of the things that it was really cool. Dylan did this actually to me. Yeah. I asked him why because I had created when I did my first galleon. I had this. I spent hours creating this scenic base and everything else, and I was like, I don't get it. It's beautiful. It's got freehand all over it. And he's like, I turned it over, and you hadn't painted half the model. And and it's one of those things you never do. You never turn your model over and look at it from the bottom.
Especially when you're just doing tabletop, you don't care. It looks good when you're looking at it.
It seems nitty picky, but here's the thing: at this level of competition, they're looking for things to separate out the best from the good and the good from the bad and all that type of stuff. So that's one of those little pieces of advice that I got that really upped my game after that.
And you use your best techniques, but use only the techniques that you know that you can pull off. It's no good to start throwing around non-metallic metal when you do it at half the level that you could do metallic metals at. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like if it's for competition, and I'll be honest, I don't follow my own advice on this. For me, every competition piece at this point is try something new, and the whole piece might fall flat on its face, so that means I must succeed. So that's how I learn new things. But in general speaking, use the techniques that you know how to do to the best of your ability. Do them as cleanly as you can, and don't leave the judges asking questions. Was this intentional? Is this an accident? Make it all look like it counts.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to move on to tonight's lightning round. G, hit that button. Not, damn it, it's not the lightning round. I meant
to say focus.
I meant focus. Damn it! Now I get this wrong. This is like the third time I've got this wrong. All right, it's tonight's time for tonight's focus. Yeah.
Like that looks amazing.
Dude, one of the things that we talked about when he was making this was the mold and mildew growing on the logs blew my mind.
Yeah.
I love that, and I'm going to go over and hang out at James's house for like a weekend, and he's just going to show me how he did that shit.
Be like when they were filming Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Johnny Depp hung out with Hunter S. Thompson for like a month in advance. Yeah.
I'm kind of thinking about just like driving there. Unfortunately, he's back at school now, but I was like, if I should just do this one summer, just go like live in James's basement. Like he'll like come down. Damn it, you're still here! God, get out!
If you're gonna be here, you gotta clean.
Yeah, all right, that's fair. That's a good trade.
James, I would encourage you to look up both the poetic and the prose Edda for your research. That'll give you some primary sources.
Yeah, Neil Gaiman also just did a book of Norse mythology where he took the primary poetry and changed it all into prose and modern style storytelling without actually changing the stories in any way. Mm-hmm. It's a really cool book.
It is really good.
And Neil Gaiman is the greatest thing ever.
Yeah, he's pretty awesome.
Okay, tonight's focus, we're going to talk about this for about 10 minutes. So I'm only going to get... unfortunately, we got into some really good conversation there. Fortunately, unfortunately. Anyway, balance. What I would like to pick James's brains on tonight is basing. I want to open this up to the audience as well. So audience, try as quick as you can to get a few basing questions into James, because this is our chance to get a little free primer, I guess is the way to look at it.
Ooh.
Is that? Yeah, primer and primer, like learning primer.
Yeah,
it was a double entendre.
Yeah.
But not really.
I'm going to throw this out there first before any questions come my way. I'm happy to help anybody with basing ideas, but the best place you can go online to find out things about basing is a website called Massive Voodoo. They are some of the finest painters on this planet, a couple of the nicest guys you're going to meet in the hobby, and their basing stuff is legendary. It's incredible, and there's so much free, amazing stuff on their site. In fact, I don't know if the competition's already ended or if it's in progress, but they have competitions where it's just design a base and imagine what will go on it later.
Oh, cool.
And they give out prizes for the best basing. Like, it's fantastic.
So the question came up because there was a piece of really great feedback to one of our local painters that he did these amazing models and his bases were really amazing, but it was a bit jarring because they didn't match. Yeah. And I've had that same comment. It's a good piece of feedback for when you're trying to move to the next level.
He's actually in the chat right now.
Oh, awesome. And I thought this was a great time to talk about this because I got the same feedback about 2 years ago, and it got me thinking about one of the things that I think is a big flaw in most people's, or a big gap in most people's knowledge when they're getting to this level is color theory. And you had already mentioned that before, James, but let's talk a bit about how you approach a base from the beginning and give some basic advice on how to base better.
Okay, so if it's for something that is competition, my base is always aimed to be at least somewhat narrative. They need to add to the story. They need to add to the impression of what the model is doing, what the model is, who they are, things like that. You got to find ways to sympathetically enhance your model. And aside from trying to find ways that add to the story or add to the setting, using colors that appear in your model on the base, finding ways to incorporate aspects, whether it's even just a small glaze or a wash of colors that are in your model into the basing, will create additional harmony that's really important. Generally speaking, my belief is that more information is better than less information. And in this case, information often means things like texture or detail. So I want to try and create multiple textures in my base, and I want to make sure that they separate themselves from the figure itself. So I'm just going to hold up my son's model here because this is, it's a 9-year-old's model, but what's going on in this makes a lot of sense to me and is what I've taught my son to do right now. So his model, there we go. The base on it has pumpkins. He's going to have jack-o'-lanterns all through his army. And the orange that's in the carapace is found again in the pumpkins. The pumpkins have a little bit more yellow glazed into them and a few other darker colors glazed into them, but they are definitely a related finish and a related color. Some of the color we used in the chipping is used in the dirt on the ground, so that there is, again, a relationship between what's above and what's below. And then to add to it further, we've added some little patches of static grass and some small leaves made of birch seeds because we want to create, again, more textures. And the grass, the gravel, the birch seeds, they are not the same textures that you find in the model. So it pushes the model up and helps the model itself to stand out from what it's standing on. The colors keep it together as a harmonious whole, but it adds interest and it helps define the model. We've also used all colors in the leaves that are fall colored leaves. So they, again, relate to the oranges in the model. They relate to this idea of harvest time, and they relate to the idea of the jack-o'-lanterns and the pumpkins in the fall. So again, choosing not bright green grass and bright green leaves gives us a little bit more information about the setting and helps to enhance the model.
All right, we have a question from the chat.
Do we?
Yeah. So Bilac was kind of wondering, typically when you're doing like just say a typical War Machine model, do you often paint the bits before assembly, James, or do you kind of assemble then paint? Because I know it's model dependent.
I assemble as much as I feel I can get my brush around.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
That makes sense.
So the pumpkins on Jack's base, in the particular case of Jack's model, the model was painted mostly separate from the base because getting around the backs of those pumpkins was going to be too hard.
Yeah.
So we painted those parts separately because that's a resin base from Secret Weapon Miniatures where the pumpkins are already in place. He's also got a bag of loose pumpkins, so when we add those to other bases, we'll just paint them separately and then glue them down. But yeah, the answer is if I can get at it easily enough with my brush to do a quality job, I glue it in place. And if I can't, then I hold off.
You earlier said the magic word static grass.
Yes.
Do you actually still do static grass? Because I find that there seem to be very few people who, first of all, even know that static grass is different than the flock that they're using, and very few people that actually even use it.
So I use all kinds of stuff. The little grass tufts are a godsend. They're so good. They make life so much easier. If I'm basing armies, I never go without like 3 or 4 packs of the color that I want. But actual static grass, loose static grass, I use as well because it can be used to enhance the clumps of static grass or the clumps of grass, but it also means that not all your grass has to be in these big groupings and not all your grass has to be the same height. By allowing yourself some variation, you can get some more interesting features. Even the old, what we used to use back in the 90s, was this like green sawdusty stuff from Games Workshop and Woodland Scenics. And I still use that for some applications as well. But mostly I use that to make moss or textures like that instead of grass textures.
I actually use that on my Blood Bowl army because I wanted the look of fake grass because it's like it totally looks
turf.
like
So,
Yeah,
so you make
AstroTurf,
fake grass.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I needed
fake grass.
I needed fake grass. So
Well, a lot of the scummy texture stuff around the base of the wood in my diorama is done with that in the water effects gel.
aha! I've learned. I don't
you-
need to live in your basement now.
So when you use the tufts,
That's why I told you.
So when you use the tufts of things, James, do you ever take a pair of scissors and trim them?
Oh yeah.
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 Exact knife, just chop.
Yeah. That was
I break them up all the time.
All right, guys, we're actually going to have to end it there. So a little bit of basing knowledge passed your way, all about that base. we've talked about this. One of the courses
Just means we'll have to do this again.
exactly,
Yeah.
and one of the courses that I'm going to keep pressuring James to do is another basing course coming up sometime in the future. Because
Yes, please.
that's one of those things that can elevate us all.
Yep.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you can press the button this time.
The lightning round.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the lightning round. 10 of the most toughest questions in all of the Warmahords. If I can read
That
them.
was interesting and new.
It's my new announcer voice. It's slightly weird. Hey, you guys.
I'm not going to get any of these questions if you do them in that way.
Just because it's so hilarious, or because it makes no sense.
A little bit of both.
All right. I'll go
They're not
to.
mutually exclusive.
All right. Question number 1. What does P3 call its green stuff? George.
Gray stuff.
No. Anybody else? Anybody want to have? Go
Brown
for it.
stuff?
No, it's called brown aluminum putty.
Wow.
Brown aluminum putty.
Why you
How
do that,
boring is that
PP?
shit?
Why you
It's
do
called
that?
Duro or Need a Tight.
Okay. Question number 2.
All comes from the same factory.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Question number 2. You're gonna have to get closer to your microphone. I think. I'm wondering if your battery's not dying or something.
It hasn't no battery.
Oh, weird. Now you're loud. Question number 2.
When I feliciate
Put your
the mic.
lips right on that.
Question number 2. What is the speed of a feral warp? What is the speed of a feral warp wolf warped for speed?
Too damn fast.
That is entirely correct, but not the answer I'm looking
Speed
for.
8?
It is speed 8. Good for you. Question number 3. No points because you didn't buzz in.
I said,
Just kidding. Question number 3. Ghostly allows you to do what? Jason.
advance through terrain, like if you have Pathfinder. You also ignore free strikes. And
Allows you to be a little bitch if you're in cricks.
allows you to advance through obstacles as well.
That's what I was looking for. Yes, that is entirely correct. The only thing I will add is that you have to be able to move completely through.
Completely
But I
through,
wasn't
and-
looking because
yeah.
that's not something it allows you to do. That's the limitation.
Yes.
So you are absolutely correct. Question number 4. What is the cost on a Krabbit's elusive animus?
1
Correct.
fury. Sorry.
Question number 5. What is the size of a trench? George.
Whatever you define it as.
No. It is actually defined in the
No,
rulebook.
no. There's a difference between a trench template and
Okay.
a trench.
We're trench templates.
Trench template
Oh my
is
God.
4
Long as
inches
a
by
piece of
3
string.
I
inches.
hate to tell you this, you're never going to beat me on semantics alone. It's just, I get to make the rules, therefore I win. James, I believe you buzzed in next. What is the size of
No,
a
I was
trench?
just being an ass.
Okay,
5 by 3.
it is 5 by 3. See, he's getting points. You're not.
You said what was a trench, not a trench template.
Question number 6. POW stands for what? George,
Power?
it does stand for power.
It's like, is it an anagram?
No, no. It's
That's why I asked,
It was
because it's
too
like
simple.
there's so
Too
many.
simple.
It's too simple.
Power of weapon? Power
Yeah,
of...
POW.
No, it's literally just power.
They should have like 4 shots bang and like, whiz for like chain weapons, and that would be funny. Question number 7. According to the P3 mixing guide, what color is best used to shade beaten purple?
Coal black. It works on everything.
I would entirely agree with you, but apparently it's
So
not.
would Dallas.
It's Excel. It's sorry.
Exile blue.
It is Exile Blue.
Nice.
That is correct.
What is a color I don't own?
Yeah.
What is sanguine bond?
Sanguine Bond?
That's not even a color.
That's pretty
Sanguine
is
base,
today.
motherfucker.
He remembered sanguine. He's like, it's either coal black or sanguine. Because that's what all
Those are the
Willie.
only 2 colors.
That's, yeah,
Only Legion players care. Who cares? Move on.
it's pretty much
That's true, yeah.
it's at the point now where I think Chris Aubin is just making fun of me when he's like, "Well, put sanguine on it." Will I'm like, I need advice for what color to use. He's like, sanguine,
beaten purple,
or
and
it's either going to be
necrotite green.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those 3. So, question number 8: steady means what? If I'm steady,
You can not be knocked down.
correctamundo.
You can paint without missing your line.
That is true too.
Oh, I wish I had that ability.
Question number 9. This is my attempt at a complex question, which is going to go entirely wrong because I'll have some part of the math wrong,
Shit.
as per normal. Question number 9. A charging Greylord Outrider can move a total of what once it has completed its entire activation if it hasn't failed its charge? Jason.
13 inches?
Incorrect.
42.
It certainly feels like it.
17 inches?
It is 17
Holy
inches.
shit.
So they have a native movement of 9
Okay.
plus
3 inch
3 for the charge.
Right.
Plus
Hasn't failed.
Oh,
5-inch
5-inch
repo.
repo.
5-inch repo.
So there you go. All right, it's time for the Minty Fresh question
I
of the
actually
week.
did the math on that one.
We could see there was smoke coming out of
Yeah.
we may need to replace those earbuds.
Out of his ears if we're lucky.
All right, this is like so. Minty has an 8-part question this evening. So,
8-part question.
I may actually be responsible for this because he came to me last night and said, "What's the theme for tomorrow's cast?"
all right, here you go. Your question this week, by suggestion from George, is: what are the 4 faction alternate color schemes shown in Escalation?
Like the names of them?
Yes.
Oh, fuck. I have no idea.
Go for it, George.
I'm gonna say it's Escalation, so it's War Machine. I'm gonna say one of them will be 5th Border Legion for Kador. I'm gonna say one of them is the not Flamebringers. What do they call it? Temple Guard for Menoth. Signar. I have no idea. Probably a trencher company. And Crix. Yeah, I got no idea for Crix.
It's the Fort Falcon Garrison combat dress from Signar, the Sanguine Escutcheon
Escutcheon.
from Protectorate.
Escutcheon.
The 5th Border Legion was correct, so I'm giving you a point for that. And
Nice.
the Jade Morn. Follow-up question. True Minty Fresh question of the week. Which fish... Because this one is harder than the last one. Which fictional character is credited with the design of the Fort Falk Garrison colors and uniform, and in which year did they come into use?
It's always Finn, Maxwell Finn, and I'm gonna say
He just does it for everybody. It's like, hello, I'm here to design your uniforms. You're
Yeah.
gonna look fabulous.
It's just always fucking Finn, and we're gonna say Escalation. So 864.
5 years after Ragnarok.
It's
AR.
Laylee's designer of utilitarian apparel, Elio Murgovin, was commissioned to design the uniforms. The
Oh,
year
of course.
was 560 AR.
560. I'm
All right, there is a bonus question.
Oh no!
Oh, my God.
What 6
This won't end.
What 6 paints are listed for the wet blending bison fur instructions in the major 2008 Hordes publication?
What? How many paints?
6 paints.
Six wet
It's a
blending.
wet blending bison fur instructional.
Bison fur.
I'm gonna say Coal Black and Menoth White have to be in there because going up and down colors. Great Coat Brown,
Gray coat gray.
Great Coat Gray, whatever it is, and then I want to say Bestial Brown, but that's the wrong one.
What's the dark brown?
You know the one I'm talking about.
Yeah. Shit.
You guys are all over the show, and I don't think you've mentioned a single correct one. It's
Okay, give it to us.
Battlefield Brown.
Battlefield Brown is in there.
I'm going to say this. If you're trying to teach someone to wet blend and you need 8 colors to do it,
Something's gone horribly wrong.
Yeah, that's bad. That's
All right.
bad.
It's
did
Beast.
Meg write this one?
Yeah, probably. It's Beast Hide, Battlefield Brown, Bootstrap Leather,
Bootstrap
Jackbone,
leather.
Thamar Black, and Mixing Medium.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds
Sure.
pretty legit.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Is mixing medium a color?
it's basically just phlegm in a bottle.
Oh.
Is
Yeah.
what Mixing Medium is. I think
Good
it's
stuff.
I could
it's
sell
totally the consistency.
I
of phlegm
like
in the bottle.
Crimson's in the chat. Sanguine something, Coal Black, Menoth White.
If Meg had written it, that's exactly what would be in there. It's
Yeah.
like just some combination of those 3 colors
Yeah.
will make
Anything.
anything you need. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was I enjoyed the hell out of that cast, particularly the part
good.
where Jason just like chugged a bottle of rum
And then wandered away for no
and
reason.
stared at us, gave us a full-on stink eye. If
We
you
got that Luigi stare going on.
if you guys are listening to the live cast, you need to go watch that period of time where we got stymied by
chat.
Ringo was just like, I'm out of here.
It was all the
Drop-
chat's idea. Be glad I kept my pants on because that was on the table.
Give him half a bottle of Kraken and he'll do whatever you tell him to do.
That's actually true.
Yeah. Shared a room with him once. It was the first and last time.
So did James.
Yeah. Woo! It's true. It was a lovely evening.
Lovely adventure.
Lovely evening with
Unfortunately, my
friends.
wife's coming this year. I mean,
Maybe not anymore.
maybe not anymore.
She may not be coming for a
She
while.
might not be coming for a while.
Wow. And then we went there.
And then there was that.
Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we got to go. We got to do our upkeep. First things first. What's going on in the world of the
Fraser?
Fraser, the Prime
Troll Blood
Minister?
Scrum is on tonight.
Sweet.
So check out your trolls. Ambushing fucking polar bears, people.
He's going to be super excited.
I don't blame him. Maybe I'll pick up Troll. Nah. Troll Blood Scrum's on tonight. Don't forget to report your games to WMHBattleReporter.com for all of them good stats.
It's actually super important because right now, overwhelmingly, tuna is still
Tuna's still up there.
but
Yeah.
only because so many games were reported when
With
people were
tuna.
playing tuna
Yeah.
that it has not been tempered yet.
Yeah. Circle Christmas is on the hiatus maybe right now, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, report your games.
Sweet.
Get them in there. Then you can see where the power creep is and play accordingly.
Awesome. I just want to remind everybody to buy their cool stuff from the Wizard's Tower. If you're a Magic the Gathering player, that's a great place to go. If you're a Canadian War Machine player, that's a great place to order your minis. And if you're in the Ottawa area, there is pretty much somebody to play there all the time. So check them out. They're super great. I want to hand it over to James. James, the Nova Open was nigh only a few weeks back, and our army sold.
Yeah, fantastic success. I still am waiting to hear the final numbers, but they brought in a lot of money this year. The raffles went really well. The Army's gone to a new home, and sounds like everybody's just thrilled.
Sweet.
So, yeah, good stuff.
So there's
Charity's always amazing.
There's hope for us. They might let us do another one next year, which would be super fun.
I've already been voluntold that I'm going to be in charge again.
Awesome.
So Dave's like, I'm sure James will do it. I'm like,
Well, I will happily lend my brush to help out
Sounds
if you
good,
need
bud.
me. George, there's all kinds of events going on nonstop. You, as the president of the Ottawa Gatineau Meta, have
Ottawa's crazy with events.
just crazy. There are
crazy
people.
with events.
So, currently going on right now, we have Rotten Bounty League running. We have just last weekend we had the first of the out of the box series. There's 7 more of those. Come out and play. There's a great big prize at the end. Next weekend is the start, not this coming weekend, but the weekend afterward, is the start of the FDB series. So that's a series between Montreal and Ottawa. Come out and rep your local. And then in October, we have the Longest Night coming up, and that's going to be amazing. We're going to be running that at 2 or 3 stores. And come out and get your pumpkin patches.
I want
Thank
one.
you, PP.
They've
Pumpkin
just gone
patches.
down that road. There's some puns going on at the old PP office.
Yep.
Pumpkins everywhere.
Yep. So come out and get those. And generally, if you're in Ottawa, come out and play.
Awesome. Don't forget, everybody, that we are live and in charge. We are live and allowed at the Muse on Minis Network, and there's a lot of other great podcasts out there made by a lot of our good friends. So if you just need more content that actually has more knowledge than us 4 Googans who just are I mean, except for James, who actually knows something about
That's
painting.
why we have guests.
That's why we have guests, because we don't actually know. Well,
Clearly,
actually,
I know nothing about the actual game, though, by my
Right.
score in the lightning round.
the
So
good news
it
is
all
is
works.
that
We weren't talking about the game tonight.
the good news is that Jason's actually learning about the game and better than the
It
rest
doesn't
of
mean
us
I'm
now.
better at it, though.
And you and I are going to competitions and starting to do better. We're no longer just scrubs. So maybe this whole podcasting thing's working out for us.
Well, it eventually just osmosis. If we get enough guests on that have a clue,
Right.
we should just absorb a little bit of knowledge.
We're getting extremely close to episode 100.
Oh,
That is scarily
dang.
close.
Yeah.
I think we should do something big for episode 100.
Yeah, I think so, too.
So all 3 of us not wear pants.
Okay.
Okay, fair.
How will it be different?
Just so you know, I usually go commando.
Oh. So there's that.
There's
So we do want to give you guys a little. We do want to give you guys a little hint of what is coming on because the three of us have been planning MooseCon a little bit, and things are starting to come.
Have we ever?
We've got good news this week that I did talk to the boys from Crooked Mile. There will be beer there.
Oh.
We just have to make sure that we have it licensed, which I hear is not that difficult to do. But they have volunteered to cart a keg or two over and sell us beer at a decent price.
Wait, they know this is War Machine players, right? We may need more than a keg or two.
Ooh.
That's why there's a brewery in town.
Yeah, we got
Yeah,
good- so there's that happening, and to everybody that has been asking about it, we are probably going to move it to the spring, and you'll understand the reasons why when we lock down the reasons.
Yeah,
why.
and you're gonna love it.
Yeah,
I
you're
gotta
gonna-
say, man,
you're
it's
gonna-
gonna be amazing.
You're gonna dig it. There's gonna be buses involved.
Yeah.
With this one.
Yeah.
And of course we're going to force James to come there and judge a painting contest and hang out and maybe play a game or two, because he is one of the Mies at this point. So yeah, that just has to happen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's it from all of us. Unless
Yeah.
there's anything else anybody needs to say. Jason,
What's up?
George,
I'm good.
Paul.
Paint stuff.
All right.
Octopus's Garden.
Good night, everybody.
Dice down.
Moose Machine and This Death Clock Has 60 Minutes is a proud part of the Muse on Minis network. Podcasts go online every Thursday morning. You can watch the show live every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on Twitch and keep in touch with us on our Facebook page. Just Google Moose Machine. If you can't find us, you're doing the internet wrong.
So I did actually learn because somebody was
Oh.
complaining about how